February 13th, 2017. I hear my name being called over the loudspeaker and start walking, being careful not to drop the flowers I'm holding as I link arms with my parents, who are on either side of me. I try to listen to what the announcer is saying to make sure all the information is correct, but I get too distracted by all the faces in the gym looking my way. We reach the pathway that my teammates have made and I can feel my eyes starting to water. As I continue walking, in between handshakes and fist bumps and the occasional hug from the boys who I've gotten to know so well, it finally starts to hit me. This is it. I reach the end and give all my coaches hugs before walking to my designated spot in the middle of the gym, in front of a few hundred smiling faces, listening to the other seniors go through the same process. 10 more painful minutes of holding back tears, and I take my place at the home score table in Pennsbury High School's East Gym one last time. As my best friend and co-manager sits next to me, we begin our final home match ever. I take a quick picture of my team from the head table to always remember that view. Playing a sport in high school isn't easy, especially when you don't actually play. Despite that, I held my position as manager of the wrestling team with pride for 3 years. And now the term manager usually brings some confusion to the faces of people who I mention it to, so let me explain. As manager, I did everything except for wrestle and coach. Now I know that doesn't sound like much, because what is wrestling if you're not wrestling or coaching? But simultaneously being in charge of paperwork and physicals for 50 teenage boys, on top of scorekeeping, picture taking, the occasional minor injury, making sure the boys aren't making a mess of everything like they always do, running the social media accounts, and making sure the coaches were up to date on everything really adds up. So not to toot my own horn or anything, but I was pretty goddamn awesome. Now at this point you might be wondering why I willingly spent pretty much all of my free time between the months of November and March essentially being team mom to a bunch of gross, hormonal, sweaty teenage boys. And to that I will answer because I loved it. Having a reason to leave the house, first of all, and be a part of something and work to make that better is enough for me, let alone all of the great relationships and memories that I made and opportunities that I was given. I just really, really loved it. So enter Emily. Emily and I have been friends since the 6th grade. We live 5 houses down from each other, and since my other friend Naomi, who was my original co-manager in 8th grade, moved to Florida, I couldn't think of anyone better to take her place. I remember the day that Emily and I approached the head coach one day after lunch. And, being the awkward teenage girls that we were, and probably still are, there weren't many actual words spoken from either of us. Honestly, I don't really know how we managed to get the positions, but we did. I know that if I were the coach and I saw us two creep in and asked to be his managers, I would probably say no, but he gave us a chance, and thus began our journey into the barbaric world that is high school wrestling. Now before I get to the conflict of all of this, I want to talk about myself some more. To avoid sounding shallow, I'll say that I want to talk about my experiences some more. And at the risk of sounding extremely sappy, I truly do believe that I would not be where I am today if it were not for that team. Making friends at first was very hard. Being a 15-year-old girl, getting to know an entire team of boys ranging from 14 to 18 is very intimidating, because for lack of a better term, boys didn't have cooties anymore in high school. So naturally, I would get nervous talking to them, and at first I would almost try to avoid them, which is very hard when you're the manager of an entire team. Having Emily as a co-manager, no offense to her, didn't really help much because she was even more awkward and shy than I was, which accidentally kind of gave me a sort of higher power over her. The boys, including the coaches, would come to me if they needed something or if they had questions about something, and if I then needed help doing that, I would go to her. But despite this, our struggles must have been evident, because eventually people started coming to us for more than just like, physical forms and weight tracking. They like actually wanted to start conversations, which was crazy. And before I knew it, I had actual friends that were on the team. This was a major confidence booster, and I probably let it get to my head more than it should have. But I was officially out of my comfort zone, and I was thriving. The more I started getting familiar and friendly with people, the more that they wanted to be familiar and friendly with me. And so as more time passed, I developed a different outlook, a different attitude. I wasn't as nervous to talk to people, and I would approach people first, which was big. And I started to build some really great relationships. I got really close with some of the boys, a lot of which I miss dearly, and I still talk to. I even started getting closer with the coaches. So enter Keely, the head coach. That man has given me so much more than just a spot on that team. He was probably the only teacher I had that, throughout all of my pre-college education, that I felt completely comfortable with. Aside from seeing him like during practices and meets and tournaments, obviously, he would always let me come to his office if I had some spare time between classes or if I needed help with something. He nominated me for multiple scholarships and awards, which I am forever grateful for. He offered to write any recommendation letters that I needed or I might have needed. So at the risk of sounding risque, we were kind of each other's like right hands. He came to me for anything that he needed help with in terms of the team, and I could come to him. And, at this point, I was loving every second I got to spend with the team. But suddenly it was senior year, and I only had a few months left with everyone. So entered the girls, Emily and Carly. Not my Emily, not, like my best friend, co-manager Emily, but a smaller, younger, more villainous version. And of course, her best friend Carly. Now, it had never occurred to me that I would one day need to train my replacement. But there they were, bright and early, to the first practice of the season, and I did not know they were going to be there. Keely told me that I would get to pick who the managers were, kind of like a rite of passage. But even though that didn't happen, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. I didn't want to seem bitter that they were going to be, taking over what Emily and I spent so much time building, even though I was. And I didn't want to scare them away because the reality of it was that the team was going to need people next year once Emily and I graduated. So I taught them everything they needed to know. Scorekeeping, weight tracking, how to organize things the way Keely liked, I even split up the match schedule so that they would always have either me or Emily with them if they needed help with anything. And after all that, it was still so easy for them to make me dislike them. It was almost like they were going out of their way to disregard everything I was telling them. On one particular occasion, we were running a tournament in our gym, hosting about 15 other schools. So it was huge, and I told the girls to help run papers to each of the tables as I went around taking pictures for the website, kind of to avoid backup, and we were already really low on help for that tournament. And so as I was kneeling on one of the mats taking a picture of one of our wrestlers in action, I was looking to the viewfinder in my camera, and I saw them on the other side of the mat also taking pictures. Where they got a camera, I don't know. Why they weren't doing what I had just told them to do, another excellent question that will unfortunately go unanswered. So I had a lot of time to be resentful towards them, but I think one day something kind of snapped inside of me. And I realized that I only had like 1 month left with everyone, and that the last thing that I wanted to do was spend that time being annoyed. Because I knew that I wasn't the only person that felt this way about them. I'm not just being spiteful. Some of the guys on the team had come up to me and complained before, but there's nothing that I can really do about that. I can't, I'm not one of the coaches. I can't fire them. So I just decided to be the better person and see if nature would take its course. So I spent as much time as possible just being positive towards them, towards the situation. If they did something wrong, I would just kind of keep my head down, let the universe handle it, see if the coaches would notice, whatever. But I wasn't going to let anything else take away from that time that I had left, because it was running out fast. So playing a sport in high school isn't easy. especially when you don't actually play, and especially senior year. I learned that the hard way. Spending so much time with people over the course of a couple years and then suddenly having to let that all go one day is so tough. And as is the case with anything in life, there were definitely a lot of obstacles, a lot of ups and downs throughout my time there. But I know for a fact that given the chance, I wouldn't change anything, and I would 100% go back and do it all again. Pennsbury High School has given me a lot of things, but I think what I'm most grateful for that they have given me is a forever spot on the wrestling team. I know that when I go home, I still visit, and people are still really excited to see me, and it kind of warms my heart a little bit. Back then, I never would have imagined that a group of destructive little cavemen could ever be so near and dear to me. Yet here I am. Above all things, they taught me to just kind of always make sure that that I step out of my comfort zone at least a little bit, because, I never know what good can come from it, and to just always find something positive and make the best out of any situation, because one day you'll blink and it'll be February 13th, 2017.
Falcons on three! Falcons on three! 1, 2, 3, Falcons!